Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start, and I imagine people will keep coming in as we're doing our introductions. Montclair, welcome to our event tonight, Montclair Climate Action, in collaboration with the PSENG Institute for Sustainability Studies at Montclair State University. Would like to welcome everyone to the first of our 4 sessions in our partnered Montclair Earth Week series. Together this week, we will be hosting interactive sustainability focused webinars with Montclair organizations, residents, and business owners leading up to and concluding on Earth Day. Monday through Thursday consecutively, we'll be covering the topics of transportation, living, food systems, and business, all relating back to the overarching theme of climate action. The goal of this week-long series of conversations is to conduct an informed and engaging discussion where we can obtain and utilize feedback from you, the local community members, the local community members, and get everyone thinking about what we can do as individuals, as well as the policies we need to adopt as a community to address the climate crisis. Please note that this is not about personal agendas, but rather a productive and respectful conversation to help move things along. So today we're kicking off our series of conversations with the topic of sustainable transportation. But before we get the details of that topic and introduce our panelists, we'll introduce the host organizations. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is David Corfich, and I'm the group coordinator for Montclair Climate Action. Montclair Climate Action is a new organization in town dedicated to making Montclair a climate leader. We are a group of concerned citizens who have recognized the urgency of the climate crisis and have come together to convince our neighbors that action is necessary now. Through organizing, education, outreach, and lobbying, we hope to convince the government and residents of Montclair to take strong steps to address the climate crisis. We believe that people have an important role to play by taking individual action, but also that individual action must lead us as a community to kind of make the systemic changes that in energy use, in transportation, and in waste reduction that we ultimately need to take to address the crisis. So we hope to use this week's events to start that conversation in Montclair about what we all can do, both at the individual and at the policy level. Now I'll pass it on to our co-hosts at the Institute for Sustainability Studies.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, for the introduction. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tirza Mills, and I am the program coordinator for the PSEG Institute for Sustainability Studies at Montclair State University, one of many who make up this dynamic team. The Institute is extremely proud to be part of a collaborative partnership with Montclair Climate Action, with the mutual goal of addressing broad sustainability topics. PSEG-ISS runs a variety of initiatives connected to the intersection of sustainability and climate through the development of community engaged research projects and building of educational programs. We provide opportunities to students, academic faculty, and a broad spectrum of organizations, including corporations, nonprofits, municipalities, and government agencies to ultimately bring light to topics revolving around economically, environmentally, and socially, sound transportation, living, food, and business, to name, just a few. Specific projects the Institute has conducted related to tonight's topic of transportation have included the research, analysis, and implementation of recommendations of a public transit bus fleet for electric replacement potential. We also have some exciting transportation-related future projects in development, so stay on the lookout for that this summer. To learn more and connect with PSEG-ISS, visit our website, montclair.edu/ISS, in addition to our variety of social media outlets. With that said, I'll turn things over to the moderator for the evening, Christopher Snyder.
Thanks so much, Tirza. Like we said, we're very happy to have you all joining us tonight. And to get right into it, I'd love to introduce our very first speaker, Adeline Cochran here from Montclair State University. So Adeline, if you would, please take it away. If you could introduce yourself first of all.
Sure. As Chris just said, I am Adeline Cochran. I work in the Office of Energy Management within the Division of University Facilities at Montclair State University. I've been there for a little over 20 years. I've been in every conceivable area of facilities that you can think of during that time. I'm also a Montclair resident. I moved to Montclair almost 15 years ago because I was working at the university already. My car was about to die, and I wanted to live the car-free life. I didn't want to worry about oil changes or filling the tank or any of that, or commuting really. So I managed for about 14 years without a car, and I learned a lot about public transit during that time, specifically the public transit around Montclair Township.
Great. And in that time, if you could describe in your own words for us the successes that you've experienced or any of the benefits that you've seen so far as a result of all of these sustainable practices that you've been trying to achieve, namely allow the public transportation use.
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest one has been at the university, just helping the management and administrators within facilities to realize that making changes is really easy when you look at the language that's in the templates that we use for requests for proposals, which is how we get services, design services and construction services from contractors. And also just policy and contract language. It's fairly easy to develop the policies and the language that you need, and it can go a really long way to ensuring that sustainability has built-in action items for every project. Specifically right now, I'm working on a complete streets policy for the university. And one of the ways we really pushed that to the administration was to tell them that, hey guys, we're already doing all of this work, but if we actually write the policy and highlight that we're doing this work, then it opens it up, or opens the university up to a lot of other opportunities, not just potential funding, but also we would be able to collaborate with other, the surrounding municipalities and other organizations that are working towards similar goals.
Great. Glad to hear about all of the policy implementation. That's hopefully a very strong foundation for a lot of this future work. And then can you tell us about any of the barriers that you've kind of encountered in this process and the ways that you've been able to overcome them?
Yeah, actually. So I think specific to transportation, when it comes to public transit, I think there are some personal barriers that a lot of people need to get past. Northern New Jersey is a very car-centric environment. Most people don't think of taking the bus or taking the train or carpooling as convenient. And it requires, them to make a change where they need to give up a little bit of control. And not everyone wants to do that. And I totally understand that. I think I was one of the few that really embraced getting on the bus and out of the car. But just through conversation and making a lot of information about the various transit options easily accessible to people, I think that folks are pretty quick to change their minds, especially in the last few years. New Jersey Transit specifically developed a new phone app, and it is so much better than trying to navigate their website like I had to do, 14 years ago. So just getting people past the idea of anything other than a single occupancy vehicle as being inconvenient is huge. And I think one of the other issues that people seem to encounter a lot if you start talking about electric vehicles, the first thing that comes up is, oh, well, the distance has such limitations on it. And I think that with the governor's goals for getting that infrastructure in place so that there's going to be more charging stations available along major transit corridors in the state, I think that's gonna help to get past those limits.
Well, I think we'll definitely be hearing more about that tonight, which is great. And for just our final comments for now, before we move to our next speaker, what is some immediate way that someone right now who wants to make a more sustainable change in their daily activities, what would you recommend that they look into doing that they can begin like right now?
I would challenge them to leave their car in their driveway, and just, even if it's only a few days a week, experiment with walking to do your errands, or looking up the bus schedule and figuring out how you can get to work or to the grocery store or whatever your errands happen to be, using the bus or the train, walking, biking, whatever you're comfortable with. It's a lot easier than most people think. And I think that if you can manage that for a few days a week, maybe expand that for an entire week and then see if you can go even longer. I think you'll notice that you feel a little bit better getting some exercise, and your wallet's certainly gonna notice when you're not filling your tank a couple times a week.
Well, fantastic. Adeline, thank you so much. We'd now like to invite on our second speaker for the night, Ms. Deborah Kagan.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Deborah Kagan. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition. And I've got some slides here I'm going to share with us tonight. Let's see. Here we go. Great. So in addition to being the Executive Director of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, which is a statewide advocacy organization for bicyclists and pedestrians. And we really believe in the connection that a more rideable and walkable New Jersey means a more livable, equitable, and sustainable New Jersey. So I want to talk a little bit about the connection with active transportation or biking and walking and sustainability in New Jersey. I'm also a resident in Montclair. I've lived here for over 30 years. And am also a board member of Bike Walk Montclair and a former president of Bike Walk Montclair. So I've been involved with a lot of the policy and issues around active transportation and complete streets here in Montclair. So there are a lot of benefits to biking and walking that we know about in terms of health and promoting equity, improved access to public transportation. And tonight, talk a little bit more about specifically its relationship to sustainability in the environment. This is a really interesting, I think, graph about carbon emissions. So if we're going to talk about transportation and sustainability, we have to talk, of course, about reducing carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. And actually in New Jersey, transportation is 41% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So getting to any of the goals, whether it's the Paris Agreement goal of reducing it by 43% by the year 2030, or by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's goal of reducing it by 80% by 2050, we have to talk about this area of transportation. And in particular, the vehicle miles traveled. So there's a lot of talk about electrification and the importance of that. And we certainly support that as a exciting and important area to move into for all of our cars. But it's also a slow transition to a completely electric fleet, and to even producing the electricity will still produce carbon emissions, and construction of car infrastructure is also very fossil fuel intensive. So thinking about how to meet these sort of sustainable goals, our organization wants to talk a lot about why we need to enhance transit, biking, and walking, as well as having more accessibility in a smaller area, which people might have heard of the 15-minute city. That's now a popular idea of having a concentration of areas close by to make it easier to get to and to help us make decarbonization easier. To do this, we think it's really important to encourage people out of their vehicles, just as Allison was talking about. And it's to do that, we really need to strengthen the safe and convenient walking and biking infrastructure in our communities. So not just about individual behavior, but about what do our streets look like? Are we designing our streets so that they are safe for vulnerable users, for people who are not in their cars? And as Allison also mentioned, we live in a very car-centric culture. So getting policy and getting implementation of policy where we're looking at our streets to serve all people, not just cars, is a challenge. And that's what we're working towards. So I'm going to talk real quickly, complete streets policies. There are policies statewide. There's a new complete and green streets for all model policy that the DOT has supported that includes a lot of these issues about making sure that streets are accessible for everybody and for all ages and for all modes of transportation, including protecting the rights of people who bike and walk, as well as introducing micromobility or scooters, electric bikes, etc. Here in Montclair, I'm going to talk just really briefly about the Montclair Safe Plan, and also about a project that we are working on, an infrastructure project for a greenway, the Essex Hudson Greenway, very briefly. So complete streets again. is looking at streets, not just for cars, but for everybody, for people who are biking, for who are walking. What do our street designs look like so that we are making them safe for all users and not just looking at them as a place for people to get quickly from one place to another in cars. Montclair was one of the first in New Jersey to pass a complete streets policy in 2009. There are now 160 municipalities across New Jersey, including 8 counties that have complete policies. But the issue really comes, how are those policies implemented? And here in Montclair, we have been struggling to have the policy actually implemented so that it impacts how we are safely walking and biking and getting through our streets. In 2017, there was something developed called a plan called the Montclair Safe Plan, or Streets Are for Everyone Plan. It was a document that was funded by the New Jersey DOT, and it identified a whole network of potential routes and strategies to help us figure out where we should be and what we should be doing to redesign our streets to make them safer for biking and walking. And there was a lot of community input, and there was a whole steering committee of advisors. It was a 1.5-year process. That plan was held up by various committees in town, including the planning committee, for over 3 years. And it took a lot of advocacy and a lot of talking to people to finally get that adopted. And luckily, in last year, the Montclair Safe Plan was adopted. So it's now part of the master plan for planning in Montclair. And now the question becomes, how do we use that plan to actually implement and make our streets safer? The other project I wanted to talk about that we're involved in is a greenway project. So greenways are linear park corridors. They often have environmental and recreational and can have transportation uses. They're usually a shared path for biking and walking, and other non-motorized uses, although some are also used by electric bikes. This particular project is 8.6 miles, and it starts in Montclair. So Montclair is a very important town in this project. We would be the gateway for this. It is a proposed project. It has not been, right now we're in the process of going through buying the right of way for the entire corridor from the Norfolk Southern Railroad that owns it. And right here, I just want to, so greenways are really important as they intersect both the transportation, the conservation that we're trying to do in the area, and opportunities for recreation. It gives us an opportunity to both enhance and to restore a lot of the natural habitat that are along this abandoned railway line. So the greenway is almost 9 miles on the old Booton rail line. Right now, it's not being used by the railroad, and we're trying to actually convert it so that we can be using it as open green space and a place for us to safely bike and walk off streets. There's a continuous corridor here that can also act as a wildlife corridor for lots of different species. This goes through all kinds of different neighborhoods. It goes through suburbs, it goes through over across the meadowlands, as well as through some of the urban areas. And here you can see all the towns that it goes through and the different parks and open spaces that it could connect. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. So I know Chris asked what we have to suggest that people can do to support. So I would say the first thing being, people should get involved and be aware of what the Montclair Safe Plan is about in Montclair, that we educate ourselves about what complete streets means and what we could be doing, talking to our neighbors and getting involved in the discussions in towns about that we as citizens and residents of Montclair can have a say in how our streets are designed and how we can be in our streets more safely for both biking and walking. Certainly during COVID, we have seen many more people that are out walking and biking, both for our health, physical health, and our mental health. So the fact that this is public space, and the largest area of public space in our town are our streets. we should be involved in how we can make them safer. There have been a number of, in fact, fatalities and many car crashes where pedestrians and bicyclists have been involved in Montclair, a very high percentage, way more than most municipalities in the country. Essex County has a very high percentage, for instance, of pedestrian and bicycle crashes. And for the Greenway, there's a website, the EssexHudsonGreenway.org. There's a letter that anybody can fill out. It goes to our county commissioners and our county executive, and it shows that we are in support of creating this incredible opportunity for 135 acres of new green space and safe walking and biking off street. So I hope that was a lot for a short period of time, but I wanted to just sort of touch on both of those areas that people can get involved in, and I'm happy to answer more questions later.
That is perfect. Thank you so much for sharing, Deborah. We're really excited to hear all about the Greenway. I'd like to take this time to remind everyone, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask our participants, please do feel free to go and submit your questions into that Q&A box. We'll be answering them after all 4 of our speakers for tonight have finished presenting what they have for us right now. And then without further ado, we'd like to invite Ben Rich from the Montclair Environmental Commission to speak for tonight. Ben?
Thanks, Chris. Hey, my name is Ben Rich. I've been Rich all my life, and I am co-chair of the Montclair Environmental Commission. I'm also the head of OASIS Northern New Jersey, which is a group of sustainability coordinators at private schools and public schools throughout Northern New Jersey. It stands for Organizing Action for Sustainability in Schools. And we get together and give each other best practices. And then also I teach and am sustainability coordinator at the Montclair Kimberly Academy. So let me get some stuff up here. Here we go. So can you see my presentation? Great.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So, sustainable transportation. All right, so just real quick, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that that I've done with electric vehicles, but then get into a lot of what Deb was just talking about in terms of municipal changes in infrastructure and that kind of thing. So, so I've been teaching at the Montclair Kimberly Academy for a few years. I teach AP Environmental Science, and I head the Environmental Action Club. And through the club, we've earned some awards through Eco Schools USA. And this is a fantastic program. So if you have kids in a school, definitely look up this program. And if there's someone at that school who if there is a club, have them do it, because it's a terrific way to get young people involved early. And the other stuff I already said. As one thing I did want to mention is, as Montclair Environmental Commission co-chair, one of my focuses is climate mitigation, and really focusing on the IPCC 2018 report to cut CO2 by 50% by 2030. And again, as was mentioned earlier, one of the critical parts of that is transportation. So, so I've gone cross country 6 times on an electric motorcycle, just to demonstrate how easy it was. It was not easy at the time, but it's much easier now. And so I have a YouTube channel if you're interested in that, and there's a documentary about the first trip called Kick Gas. Now that I have a Tesla Model 3, and I'm able to travel much farther each day in that, and so I've traveled over 1,000 miles in one day, taking the place of a plane ride. And I'll talk about the different modes of transportation soon, and how they how your carbon dioxide emissions vary with that. But if you're interested in electric vehicles, I can help you with that. So in terms of sustainable life choices, one of the questions that I think a lot of people are interested in are, what can I do now? And so as you can see, the most polluting form of transportation are airplanes. And so whenever flying anywhere, that's going to be your biggest carbon footprint, followed by being one person in a passenger car, and largely people travel alone in passenger cars. But if you travel with other people, every other person kind of shares that carbon footprint. So it reduces pretty significantly when you do that. However, I've had my students do a project where they count how many cars go by with just one person in them versus 2 people or 3 or 4 people. And we just stopped doing that because everyone drives alone, basically. Not everyone, but almost everyone does. So the more you can share and be in the same vehicle with other people, the lower your carbon footprint will be. Then we've got buses. Now this is from the BBC, so it's British, and you'll notice that buses are there and coaches are there farther down. The difference is a bus is more local routes, which is more stop and go, whereas coaches are long distance. And a bus traveling long distance actually has a much smaller carbon footprint. And then rail, and specifically long distance rail, has the best carbon footprint. So so, and then an example I give here is I drive an electric car to visit family in Florida. I'm a teacher, so I have time, not money. And so I have the time to go down there and take a day to drive all the way to Florida. And so my electric vehicle carbon dioxide footprint is significantly smaller than if I took an airplane and then rented an internal combustion engine car. So sustainable life choices, what can you do? Bike and walk are the best ways, because not only do you reduce the carbon dioxide that is being emitted by burning fossil fuels, but also you're getting exercise. And walkable cities is an important component of that. The design of cities and towns really changes how many people choose to bike or walk. So in Montclair, we've got 3 kind of downtown areas that are fairly close to people. I can actually walk to 2 of them from my house in Montclair. I know Montclairians are very proud of being here. I've been here for over a decade, so that's my Montclair credibility. And it is nice to be able to walk to these places, especially because parking also becomes an issue. Public transportation is very important, trains, and then buses. And it says electric there because now we can use electric buses, and there is funding available for that for the township and for schools. Then if you need to get into a car, because our towns and cities are designed for cars to be used, then electric cars are the way to go. Your next car will be an electric car, I hope. So we'll talk about that. And then carbon offsets. You can get carbon offsets for when you do need to use vehicles. And then here I'm kind of highlighting the Gateway program. This initially was called the ARC program, and now it's Gateway, which is getting a second tunnel into New York City to allow commuters to get in more easily. So that's another important thing to support, and I believe it is currently moving forward, and there's more support nationally for that. So getting around town, you know, we have kind of these 3 downtown areas, and getting to them, if you live in Montclair, you can certainly bicycle to them. And it's great. Electric bicycles specifically are great for commuting and great for hills. And so our town is on a slope, and some places it's steeper than others. So having an electric bicycle will allow you to get from point A to B up and down a hill without sweating so much. So you can actually wear the clothes that you want to wear, and that's another consideration. And then there's electric scooters, and they come in different sizes, but some of them are these personal scooters. You can find them in different towns or cities. These in particular are from the company Lime, and basically you have an app. You rent it for a certain number of minutes, and you take it from point A to point B and just drop it off there, do your thing. If it happens to still be there when you're done, you can use it to get back. But it's just kind of like these crowdsourced ways of doing it. And then they actually pay local people to charge the scooters at night, so they're all ready to go every day. So those are actually, I found them to be very handy in a variety of cities that I've gone to visit. So in order to really get more people out of their cars, it's important to have this infrastructure. And And again, Deborah was talking about this a lot, and Adeline was also mentioning it in terms of Montclair State University, but we need more mixed use development in order to get people to be living close to where they shop and close to where they buy groceries. And that has a huge impact. So the system within which you find yourself largely will determine your behavior. And so Montclair, as we continue to grow, the world population is continuing to grow, and so we will gain more residents. And so we need to plan for how are we going to house those residents, and can we house them in places that do not even need parking lots? And if there are parking lots, we want to wire them for electric vehicles. So these are all the complexities that we need to have involved in our town planning. So mixed use development creates shorter commutes, reduces the need for cars, and allows towns to be more walkable. There are walk scores that you can find online, and Montclair has a walkability score of 60, which is better than average, but I would hope that we could strive to make that even better. And then you've already heard about the Safe and Complete Streets Guide that was adopted into our master plan. And so that's a guide. So there still needs to be public pressure on the town council to implement that whenever we are upgrading our streets. And in the case of Bloomfield Avenue, that is going to be upgraded very soon, but that's a county road. So we need to be involved with the county government in order to encourage them to put more walkability, more bikeability, and also hopefully some rain gardens in there as well. And then electrification, we need electrification of the municipal fleets. There are plenty of cars that could be just charged overnight and then can be used, and then even police vehicles which have a faster turnover when they put different officers into them. But there is charging infrastructure that we can have that will adopt to that. And then electric school buses. And if you'll recall Dieselgate with Volkswagen, there are still funds available. So if you are connected to a school or if you know of anywhere that uses buses and you have any influence, please talk to them about looking into the funds to get electric buses. Especially for schools, especially for primary and middle schools. They're the ones who have the smallest lungs, the most vulnerable to the pollution from diesel buses that are used everywhere. And so having those diesel fumes emitted right next to those developing lungs, that's where it's super important. So write letters, make phone calls, participate in the Environmental Commission. We are always looking for more volunteers, run for office. Do these things, and these are great ways that you can take action, and also at your workplace, how you can immediately contribute. You can have influence, and if you tell the facilities people that you're interested in these things, the more they hear it from different people, the more likely they are to make change. Anything you buy, where your dollars go, every dollar is a vote, so you vote with your dollars, and make sure your next car is electric. So thank you.
Great, Ben, thank you so much for sharing some absolutely great points on just the intersection of a lot of the health of ourselves as well as the health of our environment so far. I can't wait to hear more about this and wrap this up with our last, but certainly not least speaker for the night, Jennifer Fogliano from the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority.
So I'm a little bit of an outsider here. I am not a Montclair resident. I don't work in Montclair, but I've been to Montclair 3 or 4 times. I live on the Jersey Shore and I work in Newark. I'm currently working from home, but I work for the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. I'll tell you just a little bit about what the NJTPA is, then I'd like to share a little bit about myself and the work that I've been doing there with my colleagues. So the NJTPA is the federally authorized MPO, that's the Metropolitan Planning Organization, for the 6.7 million people that fall within the 13-county northern New Jersey region. And as I remind folks that I work with, it's also part of central New Jersey because that territory covers Ocean County and Monmouth County. So each year, the NJTPA oversees $2 billion in transportation improvement projects. That's federal money that we then allocate with our partners, whether it's DOT or county staff. And then that can go down to the municipal level. And the NJTPA also provides a forum for interagency cooperation and public input. The agency that I spend most of my time speaking with on a week-to-week basis is the DEP, and we do a lot of work together. The NJTPA also sponsors and conducts studies, planning studies, assist county planning agencies, and monitors compliance with national air quality goals. And ultimately, all the projects that use the federal transportation dollars must be planned and approved through the NJTPA. So we play a large role, and we coordinate with many different partners. You kind of have the ability to touch on a little bit of everything, especially those of us who work at the agency or the authority who are planners, because planners, I'm an urban planner by background, and we tend to be interested in a little bit of everything, not just one subject. So I started off my career as a transportation planner for the MTA in New York, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and I spent my time thinking about subways and buses and commuter railroads, and then shifted over to a little bit of a different scenery. And I was moving into the more environmental field and went from transportation planning to work as an environmental planner, but really it's both. And the big thing at the time when I joined NJTPA was taking a look at electric vehicles. And it's been slow moving, but it's really now starting to take off with money from the Volkswagen settlement and the agenda that Governor Murphy has set out. So we've been helping to support that. So at NJTPA, I manage the climate change adaptation and mitigation programs. I'll just give you a sampling of a few of them, but at the broad level, I work with communities, sometimes indirectly via my work with the county and municipal staff, but then sometimes I'll work with municipalities directly through technical support, such as there was an electric vehicle planning study that we sponsored and helped put together for Montclair. So we work with Montclair staff on that back in 2017. And sometimes that work with the public comes in the shape of outreach, public engagement. So some of what I've done there, resulting in sustainability practices and of course with my colleagues, has been taking a look at sustainability through the Together North Jersey Consortium. If you haven't heard of Together North Jersey, I encourage you to check it out. It's a public forum and it's volunteer based, and we welcome input from all. So the goal is to make the region more competitive, efficient, livable, and resilient through collaboration, technical assistance, and peer exchange opportunities. And although we're here talking about transportation, I have to say that the Resilient Task Force, which I help lead, focuses on more than just transportation, but really, and we know with planning, all of these things ultimately come together. They're all connected. So we did a workshop. The Resilient Task Force did a workshop on the community rating system, or CRS, and that helped counties and municipalities become more aware, excuse me, of FEMA's community rating system. I'm not sure if Montclair is enrolled in that, but it's a terrific program that can benefit the town, the government, the local level, as well as property owners if they are located in floodplains. We produced a webinar series on the topic of climate resilience, which serve to explain approaches and tools available to local decision makers to reduce the vulnerability of their communities to climate change. And let me see, I'll highlight the names of those. That was the Climate Change and Wetland Restoration webinar. These are all available online, by the way, if anyone is interested. The Green Infrastructure and Urban Resiliency webinar, and the web-based Coastal Resiliency Planning Tools webinar. And more directly related to transportation through Together North Jersey, we developed a green stormwater infrastructure and transportation workshop, which was geared towards, this was in 2019, and some of that material is still available online. That was geared towards engineers, planners, elected officials, planning board members, public works directors, and other local and regional officials who are interested in investing in green infrastructure within the transportation network. And if you're not familiar with green infrastructure, although I suspect many here are, it serves as a cost-effective, resilient approach to managing stormwater. And it has significant community benefits such as improving water quality, sequestering carbon, reducing heat island effects, and improving livability challenges. And there's certainly a place for it within the transportation network. And most recently, through the Resilient Task Force, we developed the Sustainability and Resiliency Toolkit for Local Master Plans. So this is a user-friendly online toolkit that identifies a wide range of sustainability solutions and accompanying deployment strategies, excuse me. The toolkit serves as a repository of existing guidance materials, as well as links to external online sources, and is useful to town planners, although we recognize not every town has a planner, but it could also be utilized by the Green Team, or really any member or citizen who's interested in helping to promote these things and is motivated to work with their town. So you can find ways to prepare sustainability within your local master plans. So I will touch upon electric vehicles quickly, but I know others are working in that sphere. Just to say that with the NJTPA, we've assisted the efforts to advance electric vehicle readiness, meaning readiness term is really acknowledging that workplaces and towns don't always have the infrastructure ready, or they don't know what infrastructure is required in order to help kind of facilitate the adoption. So we can't expect that residents will go out and en masse and purchase their EVs if they don't know where to charge, for example, or if they can park somewhere, if it's prohibited. So we have participated in task force with counties and helped folks with data and other technical materials. And right now we are working on a training for the TMAs. The TMAs are the Transportation Management Associations, and there are 8 or 9 of them throughout the state. And they assist residents and the work and various workplaces with shuttle rides, van rides, communication on transportation, you name it, a variety of things. And they're going to take this information that we're developing. There will be an EV resource library and kind of help spread the word out, because we know that not one of us can do it. There's just so much information there, and we're looking to get it out as quickly as possible so that people are less hesitant to go out and get an EV. And I'd be happy to talk about, maybe we'll wait until the Q&A, but really that it's much more affordable than people think, because that's typically one of the hangups keeping people from moving forward.
I hope we can definitely address a lot of those in the Q&A section. I think you've made a lot of great points so
Great.
far, Jennifer. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for sharing those.
Mhm.
Before we do begin to answer some of these questions, I would love to remind all of our attendees tonight that as a part of the event, we would love to get a little bit of your own feedback from you. So not just our speakers, but also from everyone in attendance. We do have a survey link that has just gone out into the chat. If you have a moment after the presentation, or while you're listening along, if you would like to take a survey, we'd absolutely love to have all of your feedback, and this will go to help improve the future programming and what the Montclair, excuse me, the Montclair Climate Action and all their partners will be working on for some time to come. So without further ado, then I'd love to bring us back to answering some of your questions from the audience. We do have one question I think is great, and it was something we haven't covered yet. What can we do to contribute to the safe use of some of these alternate modes of transportation? So for someone that would like to step away from a conventional internal combustion engine car and wants to become an active pedestrian or bicyclist or use an e-bike or scooter, what different ways could someone approach that and make sure that they're practicing that safely so that they may not end up, for example, in a collision with an automobile?
To be a safe pedestrian, we also have to educate drivers. It's not just up to pedestrians or people who want to ride bikes to be safe. It's really about all of us and how we are aware of the rights of people who are not in cars on our streets. So it's a combination of those things. There are, for instance, Bike Walk Montclair does do education on safe and smart cycling. There are actually classes that are done live for both adults and children that we do. Having people be aware of what their rights are. If you're driving a car, for instance, a lot of people don't even know that once a pedestrian steps into a crosswalk, they have the right of way to cross the street, and the cars are supposed to stop. So anybody who lives near some of the major arterials in town, like I do near Grove Street, knows that a lot of times it's hard to just cross the street. So we have to make people who are driving cars aware of what the rights are for bicyclists and for pedestrians. And from our perspective, a lot of what will make it safer for people to bike and to walk is really to design our streets so they're safer. It really has to do with policy and changing the infrastructure in our town and not just leaving it up to each individual. But there's certainly things we can do in the meantime. As I said, there are classes in bike education. As drivers, we should be very aware of the presence and rights of more people who are what we call vulnerable road users, who are people not in cars, but in bikes or walking or in wheelchairs or on rolling skateboards, electric scooters or bikes.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. And a quick follow-up question to that from one of our participants as well. And hopefully you and Adeline can shed some light on this matter. As far as the planning sides of things go, what considerations do we have to think about for our bicyclists or other active transportation users when encountering things like very narrow roads? So you may not have a lot of shoulder to work with, or you may not have, or the rider may have to try and enter the sidewalk if there is not enough road space to safely ride a bicycle. So what are some possible ways to safely navigate a bike in that environment? Or what's the steps that we can take to kind of overcome and see a change to that environment?
So for instance, a lot of people don't know that when you're riding a bike in the street, you have the right to what's called take the lane. Meaning if there is if it's a narrow street and you have to get by, for instance, parked cars, you have the right to be in the center of the lane and to move forward. And a lot of drivers don't know that. Often I get people who honk their horn behind me. That is in fact the law. There is actually an effort to have a law passed in New Jersey called the 4-foot passing law. Many states have a law that requires when a car passes you to have 4 feet, and that is the amount of space that if you opened a door, you would hit a bicyclist going by. So there are laws in process for this, but bicyclists do have the right to take the lane. You try to stay over as much to the right of the lane. In Montclair, it is not illegal to ride on the sidewalk, but of course we have to be very conscious that the sidewalk includes people who are walking not on a vehicle, and so you have to share that space.
Great, thank you so much. Transitioning now to some questions about the electric vehicles that are entering the roadway. I'm sure Ben has a lot to say about this. I know he's had ample experience with the long range use of the EVs. Ben, if you have a little bit more of, if you could share some of your experience with just the long range capacities of the EVs to help kind of dispel this myth of the range anxiety that a lot of people might have when considering adopting one instead of a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle.
Sure. Yeah. The main things that kind of stop people from buying an EV, even if they're a little bit interested, is one, they're concerned about range. They're concerned about those few times when they want to take a road trip, can they take it? And the answer is yes. Now there is a bevy of options from a variety of manufacturers. Right now, Tesla definitely has the most robust network of supercharging stations across the country, but thanks to the VW Dieselgate money, the other cars their networks are becoming more robust and they're able to charge faster. So you can take an electric vehicle on a road trip, and you can easily get, any road trip that most people take is going to be less than 400 miles, and you can take that almost as easily as in an internal combustion engine car. Some of the questions that came up in the chat were, how do you get people comfortable with EVs? And you just got to get butts in seats. People just got to sit in them and ride or drive in them. And experiencing it helps people understand how much power they have. They accelerate better than gas-powered cars, but also they work the same. And so it's really just that fear of the unknown and getting comfortable with it. That's a big factor. In terms of buying one, there are tax rebates and federal tax credits. So for any electric vehicle that's not a Tesla or GM, you get $7,500 off your taxes from the federal government. In New Jersey, we just got last January, so like almost a year and a half ago now, we just got a $5,000 rebate. So not a tax credit. Immediately you get $5,000 rebate. They're fixing it a little bit. It was the person buying the car had to apply for it in the past. They put it on pause, and when they start it up again, I believe in July, then the dealership is going to do that. So if you buy an electric vehicle that's under $55,000, then you automatically get about $12,500 off the price. So if you're worried about the price, there are credits available, and there's no tax on electric vehicles in New Jersey. So those are all really important things to know. In terms of charging, you really don't need to charge within the range of your car. So you don't need charging available in town. In Montclair, we have over 12 charging stations available in town. And so but that's more for people who are coming from out of town. They might need to charge, but if you live in town, you definitely don't need to charge. Charging at home, you can do it with a regular 110 volt outlet. If you've got one in a garage or on the outside of your house, you can just plug into that. If you want to charge faster, you can get a level 2 charger. And then there's a question that came up, how can the township make EVs accessible to renters? And that's a really important thing. That's one of the things that I plan to address fairly soon with the Environmental Commission. But basically potentially having an ordinance or something like that, saying that any new parking lot must be wired for electric car charging. Doesn't have to have the chargers in it, but it has to be wired for that to future-proof themselves. Nearby towns, I believe Maplewood actually I can't remember if they require or they recently convinced a developer to make 100% of their the new parking area for residential, either condos or apartments, is going to be wired for electric vehicle charging stations. And that's what we're going to need, because car companies are now moving away from internal combustion engine. General Motors committed to 100% EVs by 2030. Ford's European division committed to the same thing. We're going to see that from a lot more manufacturers. So electric vehicles are amazing. There are plenty. I mean, if you live in Montclair, you've seen electric cars, right? If you know what a Tesla Model 3 looks like, you have seen an electric car. So there's a lot more of them, and people have them. So, and if you're interested, I'm happy to talk to people one-on-one about like charging and how that all works. So feel free to email me after the event.
I think that sounds great, Ben, and we love your points about all of the ordinance and policy approaches that we're going to want to start taking. On that note, we would want to pivot just for a moment and thank some of the special attendees that we have this night. We would love to acknowledge some special guests that we have, our city council members and the mayor who have joined us. We hope that we will be able to work with you to make more opportunities to reduce carbon emissions through transportation through these policy changes. And we are really looking forward to being able to work towards that end. And I think for a little bit of closing guidance in order to help us do that, Jennifer, do you have any final remarks on how interested persons in the municipality or the municipality itself can begin to work with the Transportation Planning Authority to start making some of these ordinances that Ben just spoke about?
Well, I would say just keep an ear out, because the Department of Environmental Protection is currently developing a best practice manual and ordinance. And we're actually working with them to do that. They're kind of holding it up because there's some legislation that is in the works that might kind of affect how we write this, but it's coming soon. And I think that's going to be a big help to towns in general. And again, I mentioned Together in North Jersey, it's the Resilient Task Force is not always about transportation, but I think we understand that whether it's housing, it's public health, greenways, it's all connected. And we do work on transportation that is open to citizens. And I just, I don't think this needs to be said much to Montclair residents since you're so progressive, but I think it's always a good idea to urge people to get involved in policy, because we all have that ability. It's really needing to shift policy at the local, state, and federal level. And I think individual actions are very important and we need them. But if we want to make substantial change, we need to see that shift in policy. So whether it's joining your green team or speaking directly with council members, give it a try.
And I believe early in the night you had mentioned some focus groups or listening sessions that were being performed. Is there a way that interested individuals can find out about when these events are happening ahead of time so that they can participate?
Focus groups or listening sessions?
The policy development, I believe.
Policy development. I'm not sure exactly which thing it's referencing. Was it having to do with the TMA's training?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, we're working with the transportation management authorities. We'll be kind of helping them deliver presentations, and that they can take that out to towns that they work with, the municipalities and counties and workplaces. And that will be available. Probably we'll have material on our website. The TMAs will have it. And I think I'm presenting at a Sustainable Jersey panel on that topic pretty soon. If anyone's attending the Sustainable Jersey Summit, you can listen into that for more information.
Great, thank you so much. I believe we are running up on our 8 p.m. deadline here, so I do apologize. I do believe we have just some final remarks here, so I'll pass this off to Tirza to help us close up for the night. Thank you all so much for your insight.
Yeah, thank you to our amazing group of panelists, and to you, the attendees, for joining us this evening. Feel free to connect with PSEG ISS on our various social media channels, and visit montclair.edu/ISS for more information on the Institute and to register for this week's other events. Tomorrow we'll be covering sustainable living. And once again, I'm going to drop the survey link via the chat. And we greatly appreciate your participation and any feedback. I don't know if anybody from MCA has some final words. If not, have a great night.
Thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate you, and we look forward to working with everyone on addressing climate issues here around town. Thanks for coming.